to want to have a certain outcome in the case. However, there is also another one called actual bias. In actual bias, a judge has very high interest, what we call vested interest in a case. And all chances in such a scenario are that even if the appellant or the counsels would argue their case in whichever manner, then nothing would change the decision of the judge from the onset. So there is a predetermined outcome in such a case. But in a natural flow, where a judge does rule whichever way they feel that this is the wisdom that should be applied in this, then we should not hold them accountable for a judgment that they made in the normal practice of being a judge. Again, I have seen those interviews, and I should tell you tricks that, without mentioning names, I have been disappointed.
Oh, really?
I have been disappointed. I have seen individuals who are hopeless and lack an in-depth understanding of the matters that Kenyans need to understand, especially now that we have had a tradition of the president picking not the first candidate in the interviews, but rather maybe a number 4, 3, or whichever number. In this case, I think I'm yet to see what I was expecting. I don't know for the rest of the Kenyan people, but I'm yet to see that solution-based. For example, I would see my former Vice-Chancellor, Professor Mugenda, asking questions on, for example, leadership. What do you believe is leadership? And some of the answers that I could see the potential Chief Justice giving, and then I was disappointed. I don't know whether it's because of perhaps having learned so much, and then you relax, you put your books, you put your information, and become ignorant that you know everything, to an extent that in such an interview you don't produce the outcome of something that would be called a momentous occasion that we are looking for.
You wanted them to step up to the plate and come prepared.
Yeah, there is a lot of ignorance. That is the word from the responses that I'm getting from these guys, and because they are learned, we normally call them learned friends. But I doubt. Perhaps they relaxed when they got into practice, and this should be a wake-up call.
Okay.
Yes.
And perhaps also the pressure of the day, perhaps? You did see what happened with Justice Said? I
don't think it is the pressure of the day. You see, when you're coming to do an interview for example, a position like the Chief Justice, you need to be prepared. You need to have your facts right.
Agreed.
And please do not assume that people assume you are learned.
Yeah, you come there by virtue of your reputation and hope it's easy on you. Now, Mr. Torrested, were you equally disappointed, or has any of these candidates impressed you so far?
So far, so good. Really? I can actually say I have not gotten that excitement moment out of the interviews. They are still very average and just very normal interviews. But most fundamental to discuss is the issue of Justice Martha Koome. I think when I watched her during the interview, she comes out as a very informed person. She has that attitude you're looking for in a Chief Justice. She's very confident. She can answer the questions with a lot of ease. But then another question goes back to the past, and the past will always haunt us.
Yes.
And there we are with her trying to now scrutinize her rulings. And because that is what she has been doing for all that time, that is the only place we can go to check how good she was. And if you look at the performance of Martha Koome in the case of Khalif Khalifa and 2 others, that was Maina Kiai and Tirop Arap Kitur versus the IEBC, she made a very big blunder. In fact, it is rumored that the case was never even ruled because the ruling is not even available for somebody to be able to see it. And during that time, I think she was sitting in Mombasa, the other judge was sitting in Nyeri, and the other one was in Kisumu. So when they actually met to make that ruling, nobody knows. But that was a fundamental ruling that would have changed our electoral atmosphere forever, and they missed that opportunity. So when we get such a person as the Chief Justice, then we really doubt if they're going to come out in moments when we actually need a Solomonic step to be taken in terms of decision making. So that really punches a huge hole into the CV of Justice Martha Koome. And again, it's a lesson to many civil servants or many people in high places that...
And before you get into lessons, just to her defense, she said that she did nothing wrong, as the Supreme Court later ruled that the High Court did not have authority to hear the case in the first place. But interestingly, the Court of Appeal decision has not been published on the Kenya Law Review website, as you have pointed out. What do you say to that, to that sentiment she's putting out as in her own defense?
That was even more misleading because Justice Martha Koome knows that the High Court has original jurisdiction over every matter.
Okay, the lessons, you're talking about some lessons.
Yeah, the lessons are that most of the times the things we do will come to haunt us. We shouldn't we shouldn't think episodically, apply solutions for a certain period of time and favorable to certain quarters, because things change in the political space. Things shift, like my friend Ngonjiri has said, and you must be somebody that can be able to adapt to every situation. You can take the shape of every situation and come out as professional and as impartial as you're required to be.
But what do we talk of when we say that there is independence of the judiciary, and we say that a judge cannot be held accountable or be prosecuted because of a judgment that they made? I think in this case it is unfair to seem to hold the judge into such of course,
but then it would have a reflection of her qualification.
Yes,
and perhaps what she would do.
It is unfortunate because I know perhaps it might have an effect on the final decision that will be made, because there is the politics of the interviews that is ongoing, which is also another critical factor in the same. However, for future discourse on these matters and to set a very good precedent on judges now not fearing to exercise their mandate without fear or favor or either in apparent or actual bias, I think that we should allow the judges to be, as long as they are acting impartially and they apply whichever wisdom that they feel should be applied in these cases, then I think the politics should be kept aside. However, in such an interview, it is hard to bring the logic and the reasoning that I'm talking about. I know the arbitrary course would obviously take its way.
Mr. Torres, you had something to say.
Ngonjiri, I think that does not take away anything to do with the freedom of the judiciary to do their work. But what we are calling for is, can you make a decision that called upon to defend that decision 20 years, you will not be ashamed. Take, for instance, Justice Chitembo's decision, controversial decision in a rape case.
Yes.
He was able to talk about that case and give reasons why he made that ruling. And I think he does not regret it, and he was in a position to be able to explain it. Justice Martha Koome was not even able to explain why she took such a stand. She could not be able to explain if indeed that ruling was ever made, whom was it availed to. There are so many other questions that arose from that. And even goes to an extent of now adding in other things that completely spoil the story, like saying that the High Court did not have jurisdiction to listen to the matter. A lot of complications. What we need in this country is somebody that can be able to work no matter what pressure they get and no matter what directions they get. That is the person we are looking for as CJ. The person that can be able to lead without looking any side but looking forward. Right. So you ask yourself, do the three who have already gone through the bench fit that bill? That's the point from where we should analyze their performance from, and not really about the independence of the judiciary. But most fundamental to discuss is the word on the street is that we are being subjected to this extreme airtime on TV to show these interviews. But does the government already have a candidate?
That's the politics Mr. Ngunjiri was alluding to, right?
And you see, much because we are disappointed as a result of what we are seeing, I even doubt that in this scenario, and you will see it in the coming days, perhaps the last three candidates, this is my own prediction.
Yes, go ahead.
This is where the momentum will rise. My friend said that the government already has a candidate, and you know the discretion of the last resort is at the desk of the president, who will essentially be the one to appoint. You see, it is like we always talk of the Montesquieu doctrine of separation of powers, but that is in theory. It doesn't,
in practice?
It doesn't apply in practice. We studied it back. But in this current African setting,
the judiciary cannot truly be
even in the US,
independent.
Who appoints the High Court judges, who appoints the Supreme Court judges in the US? It's the president. And even they declare their interest. You have judges that are
more Republican and the others,
yes,
and the swing votes. Now let's take a look at an issue that seems to be haunting most of these judges. Mr. Torres, you talked about that rape case that came back to haunt Justice Said. Then we have here Justice Koome. Something that seems to be playing in her favor is the fact that the matrimonial property on matrimonial property. The former FIDA chair explained that getting married onto a wealthy man or a woman was not a certificate of wealth. She is known for women's and children's rights. Her former client, Priscilla Echaria, set the benchmark for matrimonial property rights. Now, does this thing play to her favor, or does it put them ahead of the others in terms of gender parity? Forget that assertion that the government already has, or rather the presidency already has a candidate. Let's take a look at this and use it as perhaps something that could put her ahead. Is it something that would have as much weight as we would hope? Mr. Torstead.
Let me just make my point straight on that. I did not really say the government has a candidate, but I said the word on the street is that the government could be having their own candidate, and they are subjecting us to all this. So that's a clarion call to the JSC and the commission that is interviewing these candidates to be able to rise above the bar and convince Kenyans that they are totally in control, and they will get out of this process a man or woman that is worth being a CJ of the country. Now, back to your question, Justice Martha Koome's words on matrimonial wealth.
Property right, yes.
Yes, I think she makes a lot of sense, because that has been an area that has been really closed, with so many legal people not really wanting to make an absolute decision about it. But she stood ahead of the curve and actually said what she thinks about it. And I think that should not really have an implication on the overall performance of Justice Martha Koome.
Okay, Mr. Ngunjiri, what do you make of this? Gender parity and gender issues taking center stage in favor of some, and of course being an unfortunate element for others.
I think this is a controversial subject because it involves a lot of emotions. And most of the times that when these judges rule on such cases, you will find that this is a topic that is discussed by almost everyone. People will not discuss, I don't know, IBC case and whatever, but there will be high stimulated emotional interest in a case of matrimonial issues, because it affects almost everyone in society. And so I think it is why this topic has to come up every time. But like my colleague said, it makes a lot of sense, and although I'm not a supporter of gender, whatever activism, I think there should be an equal face of issues when it comes to either men and women. I don't think we're supposed to hype these stories at such an extent like it happens in some societies.
Like in the West?
We are a modest society.
We're not okay, that's a long story. If we start that, we won't finish this segment. But thank you so much, Mr. Ngunjiri, for your candor on that matter and where you stand on gender parity issues. But clearly this is an issue that is going to be affecting many of these candidates as far as how they have handled matters of gender equality in the past, or just gender in general. Thank you so much for being a part of Press Review this morning. We have had Mr. Kariuki Ngunjiri, who's a political analyst, as well as Alenga Torostad, who is a communication strategist. On that note, we're going to wind up Press Review. We will take a short break. On the other side, we focus on the youth matters, and this time we're taking a look at the hits that the entertainment industry has taken, and what can be done to ensure that those in that industry, many of them youth, do